Gaeilge Weekly is a Learn Irish Online production. To find out more about LIO, check out the description down below.
Hello, Tigwit. Welcome back to the show. Foster Ash Week on show. You are now listening to Gaeilge Weekly episode number 130. Dhaoine Géisteacht le hagran céad is a trocha to Gaeilge Weekly, the bilingual, otherwise known as the lot simpler version, on leagan dhaoine no mar glítar gomininic, on leagan BHFAD Níos Simplí. How are we? Constámuid. Hope all is going well, and a big thank you for tuning in. Tá súlam gohfuil gachrod ag dul goma agus míle buchas as a bheith ag túnal isteach. This week, for the first time in quite a while, an tachtan sa agus don chéad le tamil anús, I'm not going to be focusing in on one specific topic or one specific idea or list like we did last week. Ní bhaid mé ag díreach isteach ar thupaigh amháin le, nó rud amháin le, nó lista mar rinnemuds an tachtan scatsa. I'm just going to be speaking about the different things I've been up to over the last week or two here in Spain by make large. Fui cúpla rud de friúil atá ar siúl agam le cúpla seachtain anús an seo sa Spáin. So I say Spain and not Seville, German Spain agus ní Seville, because I'm actually up in the north of Spain again as I record. Tá my hús I dúsgart na Spáine arís agus mise ag tafadú Níos. Just like a few weeks ago, I'm back up in Galicia. Dúrcasúil le cúpla seachtain wahin tá my rash an seo hús ag Galicia up in the north west of Spain, hús in Húsgart na Spáine. And I'm going to be flying back tomorrow. Tá my getchult rash go Seville o Mórach. Today is Tuesday as I record this in Júdge Mórch agus mise ag tafadú the 17th of February and seachtó lá déag mí fiar. And I've had a brilliant time up here. Bhí amt an sco nó tá amt an sco fós ar siúl agam hús an seo. I'm in Vigo at the moment. Tá mé Vigo faoi láthair, but I spent most of the weekend in Santiago. Chach mé an chuideas mó den deir seachtainna hall in Santiago, or to give it its full name, chun anam umlán ó thuirt Santiago de Compostela. And a lot of people in Ireland will know Santiago for probably one reason. Seans má go bhfuil aithne ag alán éirnig Santiago for one thing, like chúis amháin nó fá amháin, and that is that it is where the Camino ends. Sin an áit a bhíonn an Camino ag críochnú. So the full name again of the Camino is El Camino de Santiago de Compostela. So right in the centre, in the main square, where the cathedral is, díreach I lór na chathrach, díreach an acha leis an ordag leis sa phríomhchearnóg. That is the place where the full Camino ends. Sin an áit a bhíonn an Camino umlán ag teacht chuig an Jeru. And a lot of people listening might have done the Camino or might have done parts or Seol daoine géisteacht seans má go ndearna sibh píosa gen Camino. I myself did about 3 weeks of it a few years ago. Rinne me hin 3 seachtain de cúpla seachtain or cúpla bliain ó hin rather. And I never got to Santiago. Nor chuic me ar Santiago. It was never my plan to get there. Ní raibh sé riomh ar insin agam chun dul ar an Camino. My plan always was to start on the French border, chun tús a chur leis ar an Trúrán leis an rank in a little town there on the border called Irún. In moille beag díreach an sin ar an Trúrán Déardaoin Irún, and to go as far as Oviedo, which is about 3 weeks. On that Camino, it's a lot of different routes. Tal an Slítsa, your friúla, but on that route, that's about 3 weeks in, and it took me 3 weeks. Thug sé 3 seachtain domsa chun é sin a dhéanamh, and it would have been another 2 weeks to get all the way to Santiago, but I only had about 3 weeks free, so that's why I went to Oviedo ní raibh bit 3 seachtain siar agam agus mBéarla sin, who I make Oviedo agus stop me on sin. So finally, this weekend, for Yara on Déardaoin show, I did get to Santiago. I got to the cathedral and frick me air on Ardaglash, even though I flew there instead of walking. Detchlemain sin in odds of Egshul, but it was certainly a lot easier and a lot more pleasant on the 1 hour flight rather than the 800-kilometer walk on out fi sin níos deise agus níos éasca ar an etchelt ar chlig. and me playing Pokemon Yellow on my phone agus misé gimmert Pokemon Yellow or an phone, then it would have been doing the full 800k walk in áit a bheith déanamh an siúlóid umlán bheit 8 kilometre. But over the last few years, I've been very lucky to be able to travel around Spain a lot. Le cúpla bliain inús, bhí an tá agus fós tá an tá dearg to be able to do a lot of travel within this country. Chuna bheith in an a lán taistil dhéanamh sa tír seo. And I've probably seen at this point 20, maybe even 25 cities. Seans má ag an buinte seo gfuil 5 chathair is fiche nó fiche chathair ar a laghad feice agam. And I have to say, I think Santiago is now in my top 5. Captain Gaeilge rá gfuil Santiago anish mar chuid to my top 5. Really, really like it. Hatan sé gomorlam. I'm going to do a full episode actually soon on Gaeilge Weekly before the summer of my top 5 cities in Spain and best places to visit. Na cuaig chathair is fearr tíobhaiste an Spáin agus na háiteanna is fearr hun cuairt a thuirt orthu, especially places to visit if you're trying to avoid the touristy places go thuirtha áit na bcheartaid dul má tá tú i géirí na áiteanna níos touristy agus na áiteanna le lán tuairisóirí a cheacans. So I'm not going to speak too much in detail about it. Duime an láirts agus a nummercha sunraí a thuirt díobh faoi. But I really liked it. I liked how every part of the city was quite different. If you gach cuid, gen chathair no gach canter thief is gen chathair every kind of neighborhood within the city. Vi sé soch difriúil, so the city centre was different from where the station was. Mar hampla vi lor na cathrach difriúil, all not or out on stáisiún where we were staying was different from the area around the station. An átra muide ag fannacht vi sé difriúil own áit in aice leis an stáisiún. Then the area towards the north of the city was quite different again. An ceantar I dúsceart na cathrach bhí sé sin sách difriúil a ríis. So I suppose the important thing to say here in rud is tábhachtaí le rán seo is while they were all quite different, I liked them all. Hatan siad go léir lum. And it was really nice. Obviously a lot of history in the place, a lot of stars and áit. Not much tourism there, especially this time of year. Níl mór an thosaitheoicht an sin, go thuirtha an chuid seo den bhliain. And yeah, just a really nice weekend. Déardaoin on a jazz. One of the small things I do while I'm traveling around Spain and going to different cities, ceann an rudí beaga a bhíon méid déanamh agus mis ag taistil timpeall na Spáine ag dul chuig na chathracha seo is, although in general I always eat in local places and drink in local places, cigamín me I gcónaí ag gcéthe agus a ggóil in áit na áitiúla. I'm not really interested in international bars or places. Níl mór an sim agam and in áit na anna idirnáisiúnta chun éithe agus óil and I like going to just a normal local place, nothing too fancy or nothing touristy, ní aon rud anna fancy nó aon áit le an tuairisóirí. One thing I do like to do is every city I go to try and find if there's one Irish bar there and just go for 1 pint dul an sin chun pianta óháin agus pianta óháin nó max gá pianta a óil an sin. And I kind of have a little collection almost, or almost a little storybook in my head. That's says bailúchá the nish imeinstein about all the different Irish pubs I've seen in Spain. And it's fair to say there's a mixed bag. Cínta is Virgil and Raw. Gwil mascon, aun, agus mascon, de high down, aun, definitely a mix of kind of standard and quality. Certainly if you go to the places where Irish people are living in Spain, gan daut má hín tú chuig na hátainna ina bhfuil na héireann ina gcónaí sa Spáin, you do find a lot of Irish pubs that are very similar to back home and kind of real, authentic ones, you know, is féidir leat teacht ar land síthe tarbhanna éarnacha. Says fear Irish pub agus atá anchasúil leis na cín arás in Éireann. But most of Spain, I think people forget, there's very few Irish in. Níl mór an Éireann ag gréadaí sa Spáin sna hátainella. For example, places up here like Vigo and Santiago, Oviedo, I mentioned earlier, Luime, Oviedo, níos luha. In the south where I live, even Seville, quite a big city, few of Seville, the Cahir, Sochmore, very few Irish. I would say I know most of the Irish there. Capam Gwil, and Chuiges Modes in the Héarnig, Will Hees and Shinta, Atna, Agam, Urhu. It's really not a big community, need Pobble on a war. Again, the same could be said of places like Toledo or Cadiz or Almeria, Cordoba or Cáceres or Bilbao or San Sebastián. Really, there's very few Irish in those places. Níl mór an éireann na háit na sin. And that makes the experience of going to these kind of random Irish pubs a bit interesting. Mar sin an aspris le dul chuig ceann sin na títhe tormhanna éireannacha seo. Bíonn sé simú gan dabhas. Why? Well, because normally it's not really an Irish pub. Cén fá? Well, de ná ní teach tormhanna éireannach nó Irish pub ceart atá ann. It's more so, you know how when you go to the supermarket, nar a haon tú chuig an tulwarga and you go to buy some yogurt, chain tú chun piece of yogurt a cheannach, and they have Greek yogurt and Greek style yogurt. Tá Greek yogurt Gréigach, agus stíl na Gréige den yogurt le fáil. Well, I would say most of the bars here are very much Irish style as opposed to anything else. They wouldn't really have any Irish owners or any Irish people working there. And again, why should they? Cén fá a bheith éireannig an sin ag obair. And also when I go into these places, I go in with zero expectations. Say me isteach gan aon expectations, don't gan a bheith ag súil aon rud. The odd time I'd be on Google Maps looking them up beforehand, orintha bhéin ar Google Maps ag déanú chuirtú ribhray. And I'd be looking at the reviews. There might be one from one or two Irish tourists or that been ceann nó go ó thosaitheoirí éireannacha. And they'd be saying, oh, they didn't know how to do a Guinness, or they didn't know how to pour this or that, or didn't have the GA match on. I'm thinking, why in the world would they have those things? Cén fá bheith na rudí sin. They're just an Irish style bar who like the idea of having, some of the typical Irish stuff there. But you can't go into a place across Europe and expect, ní féidir that dullasteach gát timpeall Eorpa agus a bheith súil that they'll have football or hurling on, or they'll be able to do a good Guinness, or they'll know what you mean by this, or they'll have crisps or behind the bar or whatever. Ní féidir leat a bheith ag súil leis na rudí sin, unless you're maybe living somewhere like Berlin or Barcelona with a lot of Irish áit go le Berlin nó Barcelona le neart éireannig ina gcónaí ann. But with these places, it's always an interesting one. There's one or two good ones I've seen. There's a lot of ones that are trying too hard, I would say. Neart cín bhfuil ag déanú an nummarcha iireacht. And there was one, the worst one definitely, in Ceannas Massa gan dabhas. It was somewhere in the south. I can't remember where. It might have been Almeria. Beidir Grouch in Almeria or Cadiz or somewhere like that. Átagan mar sin in Éasca in Spain, in the south of Spain. And it was called Nirvana. And you might be thinking Nirvana is a strange name for an Irish pub. Seanscoil tú ag smaoinú sais anam aisteach atá ann le haid teach tormhanna nó pub éireannach. And of course, you're right, ar nó í tá ceartad. It used to be called Mulligans, we saw in some of the reviews. Honigmuid grau Mulligans mar an tanam a bhí ar ribh sin, but they were in the middle of a transition, so bhí siad I lór ahrú from an Irish pub to a heavy rock, almost kind of metal pub. Bhí siad I lór ahrú ó teach tormhanna éireannach go teach tormhanna sais rock nó fiú heavy rock, metal, grunge, beidir sin focail jazz ar rud éigean mar sin. Something like that, or something along those lines. So when I say they were in the middle of a transition, they're germ grouchy the lore ahrú. What I mean really is the transition was done via tahrú Déanta acu, but they had still left up one or two Irish flags, and there was still Guinness available. Fós bhí cúpla brat éireannach cheap an áte, agus bhí Guinness fós le fáil fresh, and everything else had very much changed, including what the staff were wearing and the music that was on, and the ability to pour any decent drinks. An cumas chun aon jug ceart a chur le fáil freshen. But again, I didn't go in with any expectations. It's probably the worst Guinness I ever had, but that's okay. Gan leis no beidir an Guinness is massa a bhí agam riomh ag sin ceart go leor arís. You can't go into these places with expectation because they don't owe you anything. And there's very few Irish in these places, ní léinn éireannig sna háit na sin, it'd be like going to a very small place like, I don't know, Athlone or Ennis or somewhere in Ireland, átagan mar sin, and be expecting they'll know how to do a Spanish meal perfectly or Spanish drink perfectly. Agus bheith súil go méid siad sin in an béile na Spáine a dhéanú go fearfa or joch na Spáine a dhéanú go fearfa. But I was in one, and I mentioned this because I was in one in Santiago with me. Gcomhpháirtíocht an sin in Santiago, and it's one of the best, if not the best one I've been into in Spain. Gcomhpháirtíocht na Cín is far, no beidir an Gcomhpháirtíocht is far sa Spáin, again away from the kind of heavy Irish areas, náitina Xula, Barcelona, Valencia, and so on, agus mar sinja. It was great. It was subtle. They weren't trying too hard. Níor airsteach déanú an nummarcha iirecht, but that's what I kind of liked. They had one or two flags up, but not just let's just put an Irish flag here or Guinness thing here. It was stuff that you would actually find in a bar back at home. Ruddy Hiochach Tuarhu, it's Zachtorvna Éireannach Arash in Éireann. You know, even they had the flag of the provinces instead of the Irish flag, and not brought Éireannach, be brought to the Cúigi Acu, you know, the one with the 4 different things, with the Connacht flag, the Leinster flag, and so on. And they had the Six Nations on, which again, rugby's not a big thing in Spain. You read more in rugby and so, and they had it on the right channels and all that, and you know, small things. And the Guinness they did brilliantly. And Guinness fi Shigahintach, and they did the 2 pour and everything. And again, I didn't really care about that stuff as come along fui na ruddy shin, but I thought, you know what, this is, if you're going to do an Irish style bar, this is how to do it. So on hui on one small, not doing too much. Again, most people coming in were Spanish, but Spain yigid on chuideas modes and the dini ag teachtas said this is one of the best ones on the list. But I'm sure, hopefully, in my future travels around the country and the Cúna J, mo chuid tastal chimpel na tíra sa tauki, I'll definitely have a few more stories of interesting ones, shall we say. Keen Simula and Bader is Virgil and Raw. Very quick interruption to the podcast. I do apologise. I hate listening to a podcast and there's a little ad in the middle, but this is why we can keep Gaeilge Weekly a free resource, and it's to do with stuff that's applicable to you. Because you listening to this podcast, I'm guessing, because you're listening to this level, you are learning the language or trying to improve your level in the language. So just another reminder, if you don't already, there is so much more available at Learn Irish Online outside of Gaeilge Weekly. The 2 main things we do are courses over at learnirishonline.com, all self-paced, lifetime access, the most comprehensive courses available for any learner, teaching you real Irish and what you actually need to know to make progress in the language. Or you can become a Learn Irish Online member and join the thousands already involved over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Learn Irish Online, or search Learn Irish Online on the Patreon app, and you get access to hundreds and hundreds of different shows. Éasca, Léirish, Button the Ho, Egastrú, Smuinchi Saharn, bonus episodes, Gaeilge Weekly. Also, you get early access to Gaeilge Weekly, and you get a PDF with all the most complicated vocab. It's only €10 a month plus VAT, and if you're not sure about it, you can check out the free trial today for a week. That's patreon.com/Learn Irish Online. Whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, the details will be down below in the description. And thank you very much for listening and supporting us, as always. Back to the show. Apart from that, all has been good down in Seville. Seachas é sin, tá gachrod ag dul go maith híos i Seville. We had a lot of rain over the last few weeks, and quite a wet January, February. The me anargs me fiara soch. Look, again, we're not really too far from the Atlantic in Seville. Níl muid roada on Atlantic is Seville, so a lot of the time where there's a big storm coming into Ireland, we also get the kind of tail end of it here in the west of Spain. Bín muidse ag fáil an tail endse nó piece of Déardaoin an seo sa Spáin. And that's a bit of an issue for me last week. Jerry 5 beaganín as seo domsa an sacht an scatcha is that I live on the ground floor and my apartment door opens up onto the street. So tá mise I mo chónaí ar bhun level agus oscailíonn mo choras díreach chuig na sráide. So because of this, my door is exposed to the elements. Agus is féidir an aimsir a bheith ag búla le mo choras. Now, thankfully, when I say the weather or the elements, weeks le dia, nar dearm an aimsir no na elements in mBéarla, most of the year, that just means that it's getting hit by 35 or 40 degrees Celsius sun. An chuid smóid an bhliain just bíonn ag fáil an ghrian cuaig chéim a stracha nó characha céim an chuid smó gen támagus an chuid smó san bhliain. But over the last few weeks, that turned out to be rain. Dahrí sé sin chuig báiste le cúpla seach den ús and a lot of rain, a lán báiste. And what happens, because the door is made of wood, marial goil an doras Déanta as aimid, it actually started to expand. Chusi sé ag éirí níos mó. Now, I don't really understand the science behind this. Ní hiigim hain an óilíocht atá ag buint leis agus an óilíocht tíomhthíirde, but seemingly I think the wood fibres get bigger, and anyway, it expanded, d'éirí sé níos mó, and I was barely able to open and close it. Bhí mé beagnach gan a bheith in ann oscailt agus é rúna. So, had to call my landlord firm, gléach a chur my chéar na talún, and thankfully, buics le dia, I have a landlord who sorts things out like that. I know so many people don't, thosagam nach bhfuil na rud sin ag lán daoine who are renting daoine atá le órasán císachu, ach buics le dia, níl an aib sin agam. Thankfully, I don't have that problem. I certainly did once or twice in different places in Spain, cínta grau an aib sin agus an rud sin agam rivis us Spain with different landlords le tíirní talúna. Dearfrúla, who were a lot worse, agus bhí siad ó bhád níos massa, but thankfully I have someone who sorts it out now, and the same day got someone over. But it was interesting. I was thinking, God, now I see when no doors are built out of wood in Ireland inis, tuigim cén fá nach bhfuil aon doirse déanta as aimid arás in éireann, and thankfully so, because you can imagine how much of a disaster it'd be is féidir leat smaoin if we gcomhpháirtíocht sa bheith an tobáiste sin. But I also had a friend over visiting briefly. Bhí cara ag tuairt chuirte orm fa cúpla lá. He wasn't really coming specifically to visit me, ní rá sé an sin sa bhfuil chun cuairt a thuirt ormsa, but he was heading to Malaga for a stag party. And he used to live in Seville, so bhí sé ag dul chuig Malaga chun dul go kosher stag. And bhí sé in the Choney is Seville cúpla bliain ó hin, and he said, why not fly to Seville? And it's only about 2.5 hours on the bus or train then. From Seville, the train's actually closed at the moment because the accidents thought on train Déanta faoi láthair níl sé ag dul, níl sé go ri faoi láthair. It's not running at the moment because the accidents that most people will have heard about a few months ago marall na taismi a thar le cúpla mío hin agus cínte gohfuil sé sin cloiste ag a lán daoine faoi sin. But he was getting the bus over and said, why not just spend a night or two in Seville? So it was lovely to see him again. We see on jazz chun session called Arish, and just spend a bit of time talking about different memories from Seville, chun píosa ama a chathú ag labhairt faoi cuimhní dearfrúla ó Seville and how he's doing. He's moved back home now to Dublin. Tá session tar éis bugadh ras go Bhláclia, and he's thinking of buying a house there. Tá session ag smaoinú faoi teach a cheannach an sin. It was really good, it's one of the best things about living abroad. Ceann a rudí is far for you i the Choney haar lair, especially somewhere with nice weather here in Spain. You're kind of saying to people, why not come over for a few days, and lucky to have the apartments where they can stay. An tá orm gohfuil an órasán agam agus is féidir le fánach. But it was interesting as well because it also made me think, chuir sé mis ag smaoinú faoi. I've been in Spain now for 5 years and met a lot of different people, lived with a lot of different people. Tá mé mo chónainn seo sa Spáin 2 bliain nús agus tá mé tar éis casa le lán daoine agsúla, in lán áiteanna agsúla, a lot of different apartments and houses, lán síthe, órasánnaí agsúla. And, you get to know a lot of people, but not many people stay around really for that long. Ní bhíonn mór an daoine a bhíonn ag fanacht go fála sin. I would definitely be on the upper end of it by now, being here 5 years. Cínte gohfuil mise tar éis fanacht níos mó ama ná mar bhíonn gná duine ag fanacht de gná sa Spáin. And so you meet someone, you have a great time with them, living in the same city, ag fanacht, no. A bheith i do Choney sa tír céine nó sa chathair céine fa 5 or 6 months a year, maybe even a year and a half, beidir bliain fiú, beidir bliain go le. But then, after a while, they move home, or maybe I move city within the country, beidir gur bhog siad san arás a bháile, nó gur bhog mise go áit an eile sa Spáin, or things move on and you go your separate ways, sin daoine áitina dhiafrúla, and sometimes you see them again, sometimes you don't. Orintha fecinn tú na daoine seo arís, orintha ní eicinn tú iad, sometimes you stay in contact, orintha fáinnn sibh I dteagháil le chéile, sometimes you don't, orintha ní ann tú I dteagháil leis an duine sin, and whatever it is, that's fine. It's come a cad a thar líon tá sé sin ceart go leor. I suppose naturally you'll always stay in contact with the people who are genuinely important in your life. Tá tú an fanacht de deagháil leis na daoine atá actually an áir a tábhaach I the hail. So it's funny thinking about that. Tá sé simul explained faoi sin that it's such a privilege to be able to meet so many different people. It's more a privilege chun a bheith in an búil leis an méid sin daoine. And we all know how it is if you're living wherever you grew up. It's not an Irish thing. I think it's around the world. Má tutú I de chónaí an áit gur basú hain agus an áit gur tógu who you'll naturally kind of just stick around with the people you went to school or college with or workmates or whatever. Táú chun an chuid smó de chuid ama a chathú leis na daoine céine ará tú cathú ama lo ag an scoil, ag an old scoil, san obair beidir, and maybe you don't branch out and meet as many people because you're not forced to, beidir ní dhéanann tú an bhród sin de a bheith ag churatna ar chuoine de friúla, getting to know other people. But the kind of negative of that then when you're abroad, an míbhuntáiste nó an rud dúilteach le sin nuair atá tú I de chónaí thar lear, is that you only spend 6 months or a year with them and then you go your separate ways. Change to, or change if go hásanna your friúil and you'll probably never live in the same city again. Chance man nach mai shivrív no godzo sa chathair chéana arish. But I guess that's kind of what makes it special as well. Is dócha mar gheallar sin tá sin ní speisialta chomh maith, because you actually really are grateful for the time you have with that person, being tú buich as an atá agat leis an duine sin. So, although it can be a big positive, it can also be a negative, but I guess like anything, it depends how you look at it. Is féidir leis a bheith mar rud dúilteach nó rud dearfach ach níos mó aon rud breathan sé ar an gcuí ó bhfuil tú ag fécint ar. Apart from that, I've also been to a few little gigs over the last few weeks. Tá mé tar éis dul chuig cúpla gig nó cúpla ceol chorm tíor friúil a cúpla seachtain anús. And they've actually both been tribute gigs. An dá cheann acu, but tribute gigs nó ceol chormí tribute a bhí unto. And the first one, people won't be surprised by this, people who listen to the podcast often, aon duine a bhí ina éisteacht leis an bud chréile go minic ní bhaid aontas faoi seo, but one of them was an Oasis tribute act. Ceann bháin acu bhí sé mar tribute act le haid Oasis, and it was really, really good. Bhí sé an bhá caiith mé rá. I went to one in November and it blew me away. It was the first ever tribute act I went to. Hui me go ceann Oasis I mína saona, agus bhí sé an bhá, bhí sé mar an chéadúir a hui mé go tribute act, and to get to go and see one of my favourite bands, chun a bheith an dul go ceann de mo bhainní ceol nó an bhainní ceol is fearlam. It was really, really good. Bhí sé an bhá arás ar fad, really good altogether, and I kind of thought there's no way this one will be as good. Níl aon chance go mai an ceann sa chomh maith, but it really was. Maybe the show and the production wasn't as good. Chance nach raibh an show no an production chomh maith, because it was in a smaller venue and more just a small bar. Bhí sé ar siúl in áit níos lú, agus bhí sé ar siúl I deach tormhaine níos lú. But in terms of the singing and in terms of the ability of not just Liam, or the guy who was singing as Liam, an lad a bhí conú mar Liam, but the whole group an grúpa ar fad, and they were from here, from Seol, Bas Seol lead, and so to even do it in your second language, honey, shinny yano, the Garachanga, and on top of that, to do the kind of Manchester accent or the Manchester voice that Liam Gallagher and Noel have on Blas as Manchan atá ag Liam agus Noel. It was really, really impressive. Hui sé I bhhaim go mór and I really, really enjoyed it when my sore tatnavas, I have to say, caithfidh mé rá. So that was brilliant. And also went to another one who were a tribute act for Muse, who make a ceann eile tribute act a bhí ann le Muse. And I kind of realised during the concert, hug my fijar, an cheol chorm, that the tribute bands were really good. Bhí siad san an bhá, but the issue was that I realised I don't like Muse. Ní had ní Muse lum. It was fine because I was there with a few friends. We mentioned le cúpla cara, and the whole idea of it was just do something with them and do something on a Friday night on rud éigin a dhéanamh ar ihe de híine, and it was good crack. Bhí anna crack ann. But yeah, I realised, God, Muse's music, try saying that a few times, generic, é sin rá chúpla ór as chéile. It was a bit heavy, on strum. I kind of just knew some of the big ones like, Supermassive Black Hole and Hysteria and Nights of Sidonia and a few others. And the other ones, I was like, wow, this is very heavy. It's like very electric, but aggressive gun electric. If people like Mahan Níos le daoine, brilliant. Wasn't really for me. Ní raibh sé dumsta, agus ní raibh sé mar rud a had nóch gomórlam satsum I would really like. But other people enjoyed it, and I still had a good time anyway, and enjoyed the few songs I knew when my tatnav as an chúpla hour on ará atna agam urhu. And that's pretty much it. I don't think there's too much else going on. Ní ceapan go more an ella Seol. I'm recording this on Pancake Tuesday. Tá mé ag déanú an taifeadú seo mórt fan chóga, and tomorrow is the start of Lent. Mark sin tús on Charis. And I haven't done anything for Lent in years, probably 7 or 8 years now. Seach no 8 mlína nús ní léon rud déantagam le haghaidh an Charis. But I think I've made the decision I'm going to give up social media for Lent. Tá mé chun stop a chur leis na meán ho síalta úsáids le haghaidh an Charis. I've spoke plenty of times before about how I'm kind of always trying to spend less time on the phone or less time on screens if possible. If you make lauert rivags, being make lauert gomininic an bud, foi a bheith déanú uireacht níos luama a chahu na scáilán agus an idirlín on screens and on the internet. But it's tough, you know, and a lot of these things, they're very addictive. I don't spend much time on them. Ní bhíon me cahu a lán ama urhu, but just find myself taking my phone out and scrolling on Instagram without even thinking about it. You know, ornta just being like scroll all their Instagram, gone of smuoinefy, and I start reading comments about something, and I think, oh, what's wrong with the world? And you see such the negative side of the world, fechan to a lán rudí dúiltúcha na meán ho síalta, and I think as much as there is a lot of positive stuff there, you know, cé go bhfuil a lán rudí dearfacha an sin, it doesn't have the same impact on you. It's not as strong. Níl sé có láidir nó ní chéan sé I bhaimart cobh mór as the negative stuff does mar a bhíon rudí dúiltacha ag déanamh. So that's something I'm going to try. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to try it. No social media, which is basically just Instagram for me. So no Instagram, Gnáthleagan or Instagram, apart from 1 or 2 messages for work, but no feed. That's the main thing. Don't click into the feed. Gnáthleagan does shockwagon feed agus na fiosrúcháin, and to not read comments when I'm on YouTube. Gnáthleagan ag léamh trochtarachtaí ar YouTube, because they're so toxic, and most of them are from bots anyway. And chuid just mó tagan siad ó bots agus tá siad go gcomhpháirtíocht, ag labhairt talking so horribly about other people in the world, ag labhairt có hanas sin faoi daoine eile agus có maslach sin faoi daoine eile sa domhan, and I just don't need it in my life. Níl sé sin ag taisteáim Emma Hill. So maybe an update over the next few weeks about how that's going. Beidir by nua hunrú agam no update beag agam díobhse I gan cúpla seachtain madra leis sin. But I'm gonna bring the podcast to an end, guys. Tá mé chun críoc a chur leis an bud chréile anis, and thank you very much for listening. As always, míle buíochas as a bheith géisteacht mar is gannách. Very, very grateful for your support, and really hope you've enjoyed listening this week. Tá mé anmhuiach as war gcuid taíochta agus tá súil agam gur bhain sibh taitneamh as a bheith géisteacht an teachtain seo. Speak to you guys next week. Le live on teachtain seogan. Goodbye and God bless. Slán agus beannacht.